NCAA March Madness, team previews, bracket strategy, odds to win. It's going to be a hell of a time here on Occupy Fantasy. I got the chief bracketologist from
Uh,
Occupy with me today, Walid at PC underscore lead on Twitter. What's up, man? How you doing?
oh man, I've been well, man. I've been off Twitter actually for some time. So,
Mm.
election season here, and then just trying to protect my energy more and more. But yeah, that's still my Twitter account. Chief bracketologist. That's quite the promotion. Sometimes you get lucky, you win a big bracket pool, and you just get a promotion. So that's I think where I got that title, at the Occupy fan. But just to correct you, you
Uh-oh.
know, we will get into betting odds and specific like team breakdowns in future twitches. But I really kind of want to start at a very high level.
Okay.
Given that right now, I think it's safe to say like 35, 40 of the teams that we know like are in the tournament. But I kind of want to wait till the conference tournament settle down, and next week we can maybe preview some of the more known teams. But I think like really for starters, a lot of people, um, kind of when they get a bracket, they just fill it out, right? And they're not really thinking of like the bigger picture um, of winning their pool.
No, I mean it's almost like I can't remember. I don't know if it was Saturday Night Live or what it was, but they did a skit where it's like some dude was like the greatest player ever, and he like crushed his bracket, and he went up against for the championship was like some lady who just picked the colors of the team that she liked. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Like sometimes it's like people. It seems like a majority of people who fill out these brackets, do it for fun. They don't put too much
Yeah,
time into it. Um, yeah, but that's why we're here,
it's what
right?
makes it great, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it does make it great because it's one of those sporting events where, I mean, millions and millions. I think the number was like 40 million people participate in some form of bracket. I mean, my dad participates in one at work, and
Yeah.
he doesn't know a thing about college hoops, nor does he care. But he won last year, right? And
It's
that was a
incredible.
smaller pool, but I think people are very captivated. Something about the bracket, something about the drama, and it's awesome, right? Beyond anything, tangible money, winning, bracket pool. It's a great way to get people together and get people pumped. But with that said, pools come in all shapes and sizes.
They do.
Some are 10, 15 folks with your buddies from your fantasy football league. Others are, you know, 20,000 people from a like, big ESPN site, or let's say you're competing against the nation.
Hmm.
Um, Others are like in between, where it's a big group that like, Levy Pool's one we participate in that's expanded through the years. And now you have about like 1,500 people participate. So obviously, for those that play DFS, you're kind of familiar with different contests, right?
Yeah.
GPPs, um, 20-player leagues, multipliers, kind of that whole nature. And it does transfer over as the importance of understanding your pool, right? Uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
the sizes, the payouts, what percentage of people, earn a payout? Is it 1%? Is it 10%? Is it 30%? And then the rules, which can't stress enough. Um, Usually, I think 90% of bracket pools, unless I've seen some like unorthodox ones where you get points based off the seed that you pick.
Oh,
Um, I've
interesting.
seen those. Yeah, not a big fan, but I think most bracket pools either operate under kind of the double up mindset. So
Hmm.
1 point for the first round, 2 points for the second, four for the Sweet
Correct. Yeah.
16, eight for, yeah, all the way up until 32 points for the national champion. And then other brackets are 1 point for the first round, 2 points for the second round, 3 points for the third round, fourth, and up until sixth for picking the champion. And off get those are two different sort of you know structures, two different sort of strategies go into it. If you get 32 points for picking the champion, well, guess what? Unless the champion is like some 6 or 7 seed that no one picks, unless you get them right, you're probably not winning the pool, right?
But with that being said, so let's break it right down. You talked about it, and I know this is going to be different for contest types. But let's say like Kansas right now, they're one of the more popular teams, especially like to bet to win the whole thing. So if we look at ESPN or something like that, and we see that 50% of the brackets are picking Kansas to win. At what point do you say is a team fadeable in the championship, or how
Yeah.
would you think of something like that?
No, that's, I mean, great point. And I did want to get into that because we have access to a lot of data, right?
Yep.
Now, most people don't watch college hoops throughout the year, and that actually is okay. Like that doesn't necessarily work against you as long as you know the right information
Hmm.
to look at. Vegas odds, Ken Palm, Bart Torvik, and then also the ESPN's like Nations bracket, which essentially accrues data since after selection Sunday all the way down till the first game on Thursday at like what percentage of people are picking certain teams in each round. And you bring up Kansas, they're the number one overall team. They're probably, unless something unexpected happens, they're going to go in as the heavy favorites. I mean, their adjusted efficiency metric is, I think, literally 4 points above the number two team on KenPom, which
Wow.
is it's pretty wild. Yeah, so they're at 30.83 adjusted efficiency, which means that if they played the average D1 school, they would be expected to win by 30.83 points, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Um,
Now,
con-
can I slow you down real quick? Now,
yeah,
you mentioned Kim Palm a couple of times. So for people who are new around here, like you said, they may not have access to all the data. They may be coming in completely brand new to college basketball or
yeah.
something. So what exactly is Kim Palm? I know what it is, but it's a fantastic resource, and I know you use it a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, kenpom.com. It's the second favorite website. Actually my third favorite website.
I hope it occupies your
Before
first.
occupyfantasy.com is my first favorite website, and my second favorite is your Twitter account, Moose. So,
Yes, there
um,
we go.
but Ken Palm, he is like a savant in the college basketball world. He created this thing, I think, in 2002, and honestly influenced a lot of betting lines and
Hmm.
Vegas lines early. Now at this point, the books are probably a little more accurate, but they do cook in his projections right
Yeah.
into when they create their lines. But essentially, it breaks down each Division 1 team by that number, that adjusted efficiency mark, where you get to see if they played the average D1 school, where does their offense and defense stack up? How much would they be expected to win? But then also you can dive even deeper, right? You can look at the four factors that really impact winning and losing a basketball game the most. Effective field goal percentage,
Hmm.
which is adjusting 2 and 3 point shots, turnover percentage, offensive rebounding percentage, and your free throw rate. How many free throw attempts you get to how many field goals you attempt. And then on top of that, a bunch of other miscellaneous components that help you just identify a team's style of play, how good they are at 3 point shooting, how much percent of their shots are 3 pointers, right? And then their pace, things like that. So if you haven't watched a game of college basketball, or even if you've watched it all year long, you should. It's worth the $20
Yeah,
a
yeah,
year
and,
that
and
you
that's the
pay.
thing. Like when you're talking about that, and I first learned about it, like he has this huge data set going back for however long, and I was like, oh, it's only $20. Okay,
It's
absolutely. I was
insane.
glad I sign up every year, even if I only use it, a couple times throughout the season, and then once in March for March Madness, then it's well worth it.
Yeah, it's really nifty. It's fun. You can get lost in it. I love it. I'm on it every day.
Yeah.
It's like the first thing I check in the morning. Seeing my Terps dropping now, they're at 14. But why should you care about it? Quite honestly, Ken Palm has been so incredible at predicting recent champions. And we've picked up some trends. So,
Okay.
number one, it is so unlikely. I think I don't know if a team in the last like 15, 20 years that hasn't been a top 25 both offense, adjusted offense and adjusted defense to win the national championship, right?
Okay.
Um, so that already can help you zero in on, hey, what team is good on both ends of the floor. And then we realize also, I mean, even this data is, I don't think it has the last 2 years. But from 2007 to 2010, the average ranking of the national champion was 6.38 on the offensive end and 20.13 on the defensive end. So
Okay.
you're getting more insight as to, hey, what teams, what factors into winning at the end of the day. And sure, as much variability as there is, you still want to pick teams for a reason outside of their color or mascot.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true. Yeah.
so
So,
and sorry, I
yeah.
know I went on a tangent,
No, you're
but
fine.
as you were saying, to your last point about a team like Kansas, a blue blood who's the heads-on favorite right now, the best resume in college hoops, arguably have two top 10 players in the nation. At what point do you feel like, hey, they're a team worth fading? And I'd say we kind of face this, and the reason I brought up the ESPN Nations bracket, and as you wait to kind of see what the nation is picking,
Hmm.
you get good insight as to who's being overvalued and who's being undervalued. And let's go back a year. The Duke Blue Devils, right? They were like the sexiest team in college basketball. Three perennial NBA lottery picks. Zion Williamson, the most dominant college player we've seen probably in so who knows how long, the most exciting.
Yeah.
Um, Coach K, right? You got the brand, you got everything that goes into the hype, right? There couldn't have been a more hype team. And what had happened was close to 45% of people picked Duke to win the national championship, which was a dramatic overstatement. Um, and look at the Vegas odds. That's the first thing I do. I don't fill out a bracket on Sunday. I don't fill out a bracket on Monday. I don't
Hmm.
even fill it out on Tuesday. It'll be like 1 a.m. Wednesday night when I fill out my first bracket, uh, because that's just what it is. I'm gonna make sure I know where the nation is thinking, where people are overvaluing, and Duke was really overvalued. Now, there's no doubt they had a great chance to win the national championship last year, but 45% of the time, it's like ownership, right? In a GPP, if a
Yep.
player is picked 45% of the time, but you know, and we predict them to hit that value 20% of the time, that's a good place to fade.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like you said, March Madness is where a bunch of crazy stuff happens that you really only need one game to swing you so far up that leaderboard. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And then to the other point, factoring in some of these biases, UVA was actually relative to where they ranked on KenPom. They were both a top. They were, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the only top five offensive and defensive efficiency team in the nation. They actually they were ranked number one in offense, if I'm not mistaken, number one or two
Wow.
at the time. But the previous year, they lost to UMBC
Yeah.
as a 1 seed to a 16 seed.
Rip.
So immediately, I mean, I just found that recency bias is a great way to get leverage because
Yep.
people were off UVA. They can't get that out of their mind. But in reality, UVA and Duke, it's almost like one team is super sexy, the other team is like very slow tempo, play like, incredible defense, like the unsexy team, but their odds of winning were very comparable.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Totally agree with you that. As we try and wrap this up for the next 10 minutes or so, some good things you mentioned so far is look for leverage, using ownership, betting odds, stuff like that. Fill out your bracket as late as possible to account for all of that. But we never really talked about too much about size, like size of your bracket. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what we've been talking about so far is for those like big ESPN brackets, with a lot of people. Let's say you go into work on Monday and your 10, 15 coworkers say, "Hey, let's do a bracket together." And so for a small bracket like that, let's say under 50 people, under 25 people, would you still stick with that same strategy? Like if you knew last year that Duke was going to be essentially 100% owned in that case,
Mm-hmm. Maybe, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. How would you take that super
So
fade?
the smaller, kind of general rule of thumb, the smaller a bracket is, the more chalky you can be.
Yeah.
Right. Um, Even going down to the Final Four, the Elite Eight now, You might not want to have all 4 1 seeds in the final four, but in a bracket that small, there's nothing wrong with having 2 or 3 number 1 seeds and you know a number 2 or number 3 seed in that final four, having an elite eight of filled with one twos,
Mm-hmm.
um, and maybe twos and threes, because quite honestly, that's just kind of the competition, right? You're dealing with, and hopefully you get some upsets early. But once again, even like things when you're in a small bracket pool like that, like for instance, last year, if I'm not mistaken, in the 5-12 matchup, Wisconsin played Oregon,
Yeah.
and Oregon had just won the Pac-12 tournament. They were hot. They were favorites going into that game.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the 12-5 bias that comes with that.
That's
They were
like
just the
my
favorites.
favorite thing. Yeah, I love that
Yeah, a lot of
12-5
people love
bias.
that. A lot of people love that because usually it pairs up a team that's either like one of like the best mid majors
Mm-hmm.
to won their conference or maybe somehow got that at large, or like one of those teams that just got in the tournament but either has been hot or simply has enough like firepower to kind of pull that off. But
Mm-hmm.
and we'll get into that in a second. But point is, even like round one, looking at each game's individual Vegas odds and finding discrepancies, finding don't just pick upsets because this team sounded like Wichita State, right? Everyone's going to see them in their bracket this year, and they just have that sort of reputation as
Yeah.
a basketball school.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as good as they have been in those past. But look at those opening like round odds, like the money line and the spread. That's as accurate as you're gonna get. Whoops. I'm
Rip.
getting passionate here and
I know,
knocking stuff
but yeah, no,
knocking
yeah. So I
stuff
mean,
off.
it makes sense if you see, let's say, if you convert the money lines into probabilities, and you see a team has a, let's say, 75% chance of advancing that first round, and you see on ESPN brackets only 10% of people are picking him, for example, that's a huge leverage spot. I know that that would never happen, but I'm just giving an example.
For sure. No, absolutely. And then there are biases, right, on
No.
against which is the big thing I wanted to really focus on.
Okay.
There's like a blue blood bias, right? Teams, brand names go far in people's brackets. Take Kentucky so far, and Kentucky is looking, and
Yeah.
I'll stand by this if I'm wrong. But let's see. Right now, they are Ken Palm's number 30 team. They're behind Butler, Wisconsin, Purdue, who might not make the tournament.
Rip.
But they also have that record, 24-6,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal on paper. Folks are going to see Kentucky. They're going to see that record. Their offense or defense isn't in the top 30 in adjusted efficiency, but given their record, and if they win the Big 12, I'm sorry, the SEC tournament, they'll probably go into it as a 3 or 4 seed. And once again, that might be a team that people love over picking. But if you look at their futures or you look at their opening round money line or their point spread, you're going to see it's more reflective to Ken Palm and Bart Torvik than it is to what people are thinking when they hear Kentucky. And there are just a lot of teams that get that reputation naturally. Butler, now they're in the Big East. They used to be a mid-major darling. That's another school people hear that name and they feel really ignited about. And then the opposite end, you have schools that might not traditionally be. Baylor might not be looked up on. They're ranked
Yeah.
number 3. BYU's number 10, and we'll talk about them on some other podcasts.
That's your team.
Um,
That's your team this year, man.
we'll see, we'll see. But point is, look at the Vegas odds, compare them to what people are doing. Set yourself up to at least know, you know, who's being overseeded. That's a
Yeah.
thing too, right? Like the selection committee this year,
Sucks.
there's going to be probably they've gotten a lot better, Moose. I got to give them credit, man. They used to suck at a certain point, like maybe 5, 6 years ago. They've started to get more analytical, and but like there's definitely like with however many Big Ten teams are going to make the tournament this year, the selection committee might be in a spot where they have to drop a team a seed, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
move a team up a seed to prevent a second round conference matchup.
Mhm.
And once again, don't even look at the seeds as something to define things by. look at the spread, look at the money line. Those brackets are out.
Yep. And even to an extent, look at the ones like a little bit closer, further away. So instead of like teams to make the Elite Eight, to make the Sweet 16, books put those numbers out there as well to make the Final Four to see kind of how that group is looking around them. So if they are, let's say, if they're a high favorite first round, but if their odds to make the Elite Eight are really bad, then yeah, then you can make them win the first game, lose the second game. That can help you out there.
Absolutely. And once again, that's what makes Ken Palm such a. I can't say his name one more time or the website's name anymore, but um, like when it gets down to the gritty and you're looking for what team should I ride with to the Elite Eight, where can I find leverage if you're in a bracket pool?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Vegas odds and these futures are awesome. But to give context to why you're picking a team, really look at these four factors, right? Let's say a team is phenomenal on the defensive end. Now, usually the way it works is it is probably a little more important to have a better offense. But if a team is great on the defensive end, they're top five, top 10, um, but then they can shoot the three ball deadly. Now you see a scenario where, okay, well, defense is going to be consistent.
Hmm.
And if their three ball, starts to fall, then you have wider range of outcomes, right? You're now all of a sudden, if you have a team that can hit 15 threes in a game, that opens up kind of their range of outcomes. So there's so many ways to look at it. I could keep talking about this all day. Um, but once again, I guess the big takeaway is um, know know your pool,
Yeah.
right? The rules. Is how important is it to pick a champion or the two teams in the championship game? If you're in a massive pool, even if the rules like chances are you're still probably going to have to get two Final Four teams. Maybe you're probably going to have to pick the champion and maybe both teams in the game.
Yeah.
Um, then understand where you can find leverage. Don't fill out your bracket Sunday night. Don't fill it out Monday. Don't fill it out Tuesday. Let the markets adjust, right? Let the betting odds adjust. See if there's any spread move or line movements with potential injuries or folks
Absolutely.
that,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, just pound coffee at midnight Thursday and just do
seriously.
your lineups for everyone else. But before we get out of here cuz the pizza's here, I got to eat dinner tonight.
Uh,
But I want to ask you one last question before we head on out of here. That tiebreaker to if God forbid it actually comes to a tiebreaker, and I know
mm,
my dad actually lost his March Madness bracket 3 years ago
no.
because of the tiebreaker.
How
Uh,
big it was? It must not have like it must have been a big pool.
yeah, it was a big pool, and
Yeah.
I think he filled it out super late and bombed the total. I think he put like 75 on
Ooh.
accident. It
Yeah.
was like,
Don't do
oh,
that. That's
whatever.
a sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you kind of gauge what you put in that total spot?
Honestly, the best way, and there's really no way to predict, right? Like what the score is. It's going to be a
Yeah.
guess. You kind of almost want to look at, let's say, take like the top 8, 10 teams and what they average per game,
Okay.
right? And then just find that number. It's probably going to be somewhere in the range of like a team like UVA can change it when their tempo is so damn slow.
Yeah.
Like last year, UVA, right? But for the most part, um, it's a crapshoot. You're gonna guess in between the range of 140 to 160. Once again, tempo impacts us so much, and I mean, if it's at a point where you got the two game, like if you're looking for a tiebreaker because the two teams you got are in it, right? Or one of them are in it. You want to base some of that there, right? Like you
Yeah.
want to kind of incorporate, okay, if my champion this year, let's say it's a team like, let's take like, and we have some pretty slow tempo teams at the top, like Kansas, San Diego State, Baylor. But
Yeah.
let's say your champion is Gonzaga, your championship is Gonzaga versus Duke. Those are two of the more faster paced teams. You want to incorporate that, maybe pick closer to 160, but
Yeah.
usually that's what I'd factor in, like
Okay.
the average points scored, the tempo of those. Like if you have two slower teams, you might want to ear towards like the lower end of that, maybe 135, 140.
Hmm.
But hey, if you get to that point, you should feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. Until you play a winner take all bracket and you lose off that, that would
Yeah.
suck.
Ooh, don't do that. That's brutal, man.
Definitely. So,
But there's so much,
yeah.
man. We got to talk about so much more. I just wanted to scratch the surface. We've been itching to kind of open this up, and we're gonna
Hmm.
get a lot more information here in the couple weeks, and we'll be here every step of the way. I'm fired up, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're gonna do something. I don't know when the next time is. I know we're definitely doing something Sunday. We're gonna talk about some of the opening betting odds, how
Yeah.
they first move, and all stuff like that. So if I don't see you before then, man,
Yeah,
have a
absolutely.
good rest of your work week. And if you have any
It's been a
last,
pleasure.
definitely, I'm glad to have you on. You're always welcome here because you are a part of Occupy.
Yeah, I'm a contractor now, part
I,
time. But I'm
hey.
here in March, man. But yeah, yeah, seriously, we love this, and it's so much fun. I can't wait to link up with you for those March Madness days,
Mhm.
right? New company policy. Any place we ever work at, like we're taking those damn days off and enjoying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why anybody works there, but on those days. But yeah. So that being said, I'm Moose at CFB underscore Moose on Twitter. Walid at PC underscore lead on Twitter. We're from OccupyFantasy.com at OccupyFantasy on Twitter. If you have any more questions about how to fill out your bracket, you have questions about all that stuff, hit us up. We'll be glad to help you out in Discord, on Twitter, IG, however you want to do it. Until next time, though, guys, Moose, Walid, have a good one.
До свидания.